Hello, welcome to this channel. Today we will learn about the terrifying Halloween chaos that threatens to shatter Rachel Black's carefully constructed world of denial, potentially triggering the devastating memories she has buried deep within her subconscious mind about that fateful night at the DiMera mansion. The Halloween horror in Town Square. Salem's annual Halloween festivities in the town square are about to take a sinister and dangerous turn that no one could have anticipated. Spoilers reveal that Kat Green will find herself at the center of a shocking and violent attack that will leave witnesses traumatized and questioning what they just witnessed. The peaceful celebration, typically filled with costumed children laughing and collecting candy from decorated booths, will transform into a scene of absolute terror when an unidentified figure emerges from the crowd wearing a lab coat and wielding a menacing knife. The mysterious attacker, whose identity remains completely unknown to both Kat and the surrounding crowd, will suddenly lunge forward with alarming speed and aggression, targeting Kat with the deadly weapon raised high in the air. The assailant's face will likely be obscured by a Halloween mask, making it impossible for anyone to immediately recognize who harbors such violent intentions toward the young woman who has already endured so much turmoil since arriving in Salem. Alex Kyriakis, who has developed a protective instinct toward Kat despite their complicated relationship dynamics, will immediately sense the imminent danger and spring into action. His voice will ring out across the town square with urgency and panic as he screams at Kat to watch out and be careful, desperately hoping his warning reaches her ears in time to prevent a catastrophic tragedy. The adrenaline-fueled moment will unfold in what seems like slow motion for those witnessing the attack, with parents instinctively pulling their children closer and other attendees scrambling to get away from the violent confrontation. Kat's reflexive reaction to Alex's warning will cause her to stumble backward, losing her balance as she attempts to escape the knife-wielding attacker. In a moment that could be perceived as either fate or fortunate timing, Kat will tumble directly into Chad DiMera's arms, who has been nearby monitoring the situation with Thomas and possibly Rachel. However, despite Chad's intervention and Kat's narrow escape, spoilers suggest that the perpetrator will still manage to make contact with their weapon, potentially slicing someone in the chaos. Reality or elaborate fantasy sequence? The burning question that fans are desperately trying to answer is whether this terrifying attack represents actual danger or merely a carefully choreographed fantasy sequence designed to showcase Kat's deepest fears. Days of Our Lives has a long-standing tradition of incorporating dream sequences, hallucinations, and fantasy scenarios into pivotal storylines, particularly during special occasions like Halloween when the supernatural and surreal elements naturally blend with the show's dramatic narratives. It's entirely possible that what viewers witness will be Kat's psychological manifestation of her anxiety about being exposed as an imposter who pretended to be the deceased Abigail DiMera, a deception that has caused immeasurable pain to Chad and his children. The lab coat worn by the attacker could symbolize Kat's guilt about the medical and scientific deceptions involved in her elaborate scheme orchestrated under Clyde Weston's blackmail. Alternatively, this could represent someone's imagination about what they wish would happen to Kat, perhaps stemming from Rachel or Thomas's anger toward the woman they perceive as trying to replace their beloved mother. However, there's an equally strong possibility that Kat will genuinely face a life-threatening situation from someone who believes she deserves punishment for her role in emotionally torturing the DiMera family. The attacker could be a vengeful Abigail supporter, a disturbed individual who believes they're defending the DiMera legacy, or even someone connected to Kat's mysterious past that continues to unfold with shocking revelations. The children who will bear witness. What makes this Halloween incident particularly concerning and psychologically damaging is the strong likelihood that innocent children will be present to witness the violent attack, whether real or imagined. The town square Halloween celebration traditionally attracts families with young children who come dressed in adorable costumes, excited to participate in trick-or-treating and festive activities organized by Salem's community leaders. Thomas DiMera and Rachel Black, two children already dealing with profound emotional trauma and confusion about their family situations, could very well be standing nearby when this horrifying scene unfolds before their impressionable young eyes. Thomas has been struggling tremendously with his father Chad's developing relationship with Kat, feeling betrayed that his dad would lie to him about the nature of their connection and seemingly move on from his mother Abigail so quickly. Rachel, meanwhile, has been actively scheming with Thomas, providing him with tips and strategies to sabotage Kat and Chad's relationship because she believes they need to protect their parents from making terrible mistakes. Both children have demonstrated increasingly concerning behavioral patterns that suggest they're not processing their grief and trauma in healthy ways. If Rachel witnesses someone attacking Kat with a knife, attempting to seriously harm or kill her in broad daylight during what should be a joyful community celebration, the psychological impact could be absolutely devastating and serve as a powerful trigger for memories Rachel has desperately suppressed. Rachel's suppressed memories surface. The most significant consequence of this Halloween chaos may be the emergence of Rachel's buried memories about the night she shot E.J. DiMera at the mansion. Rachel has completely blocked out her own actions from that traumatic evening because the reality of what she did is simply too painful and overwhelming for a 10-year-old child to process and accept. She fired a gun at her own uncle, nearly ending his life in a moment of desperate panic and confusion when E.J. refused to tell her about her grandmother's disappearance. The sound of the gunshot, the sight of E.J. collapsing and bleeding, the realization of what her actions had caused, all of these horrifying elements have been locked away in the deepest recesses of Rachel's mind as a psychological defense mechanism. But suppressed memories don't simply disappear forever, they lurk beneath the surface, waiting for the right trigger to bring them flooding back with overwhelming force. Witnessing someone lunging at Kat with a knife, seeing the blade potentially make contact with human flesh, hearing the screams of terror from those around her, these sensory experiences could create powerful associations that unlock what Rachel has been trying so desperately to forget. The parallels between the two violent incidents would be impossible for Rachel's subconscious to ignore: a weapon being used to harm someone, the panic and chaos of the moment, the sense of danger and life-threatening consequences. Rachel has been exhibiting increasingly uncomfortable behavior around E.J. since the shooting, even though she doesn't consciously understand why she feels so anxious and guilty in his presence. Her young mind knows something terrible happened involving her uncle, but the specific details remain frustratingly out of reach. This Halloween attack on Kat could be the catalyst that finally breaks through those mental barriers Rachel has constructed, allowing the truth to come rushing back in vivid, undeniable detail. The emotional and psychological devastation of suddenly remembering that she pulled the trigger, that she nearly killed E.J., and that her mother Kristen has been sitting in prison taking responsibility for Rachel's actions would be absolutely crushing for the young girl to process. The Jeremy Horton connection. While the Halloween incident presents one possible trigger for Rachel's memory recovery, there's another compelling scenario involving Jeremy Horton that could lead to the same devastating revelation. Jeremy has recently returned to Salem after an 18-year absence, having completely transformed his life from his troubled past involving fraud, theft, and manipulation. He's now a certified teacher who has accepted a long-term substitute position teaching 5th grade at Salem Elementary School, which means he's become the teacher for both Thomas DiMera and Rachel Black. Days of Our Lives doesn't introduce or reintroduce characters without significant narrative purpose, especially when they're given substantial screen time and story integration. Jeremy's presence in Rachel and Thomas's classroom suggests he'll play a crucial role in upcoming dramatic events that involve these troubled children. Spoilers hint that some type of mayhem or dangerous situation may occur at school that involves Rachel making a life-threatening move that puts Thomas or other students in serious jeopardy. Perhaps Rachel's deteriorating mental state and escalating behavioral problems will manifest in a violent outburst at school, possibly involving a weapon or dangerous object that mirrors the gun she used to shoot E.J. Jeremy, with his own redemptive arc and understanding of what it means to make terrible mistakes as a young person, may be uniquely positioned to recognize what's happening with Rachel and intervene before tragedy strikes. The trauma of whatever incident occurs at school, whether Rachel threatens someone, witnesses violence, or faces a crisis that Jeremy must resolve, could serve as the psychological trigger that brings her suppressed memories flooding back to conscious awareness. The devastating truth emerges. Regardless of whether the Halloween attack or a school incident serves as the trigger, spoilers confirm that Rachel will ultimately and definitively remember the truth about that fateful night at the DiMera mansion. The memories will return with stunning clarity, leaving no room for doubt or confusion about what actually transpired. Rachel will remember demanding that EJ tell her where her grandmother Marlena was, becoming increasingly agitated when he insisted he didn't know anything about her disappearance. She'll remember seeing the gun, feeling the cold metal in her small hands, making the split-second decision to pull the trigger in a moment of overwhelming emotion and childish desperation. She'll remember the deafening sound of the gunshot echoing through the mansion, the shocked expression on EJ's face as he clutched his chest, the blood spreading across his shirt as he collapsed to the floor. And most devastatingly, Rachel will realize that her mother Kristen DiMera deliberately took the blame for the shooting, allowing herself to be arrested, prosecuted, and imprisoned to protect her daughter from the consequences of her actions. Kristen sacrificed her freedom, her reputation, and her relationship with Rachel to shield the young girl from the trauma and legal repercussions of being labeled a would-be murderer. Rachel's reaction to this stunning revelation promises to be emotionally explosive and psychologically complex. She'll have to process the overwhelming guilt of what she did to EJ, the anguish of knowing her mother is suffering in prison for a crime she didn't commit, and the complicated mix of gratitude and anger toward Kristen for making that sacrifice without Rachel's knowledge or consent. The question of what Rachel will do with this knowledge, whether she'll immediately confess the truth to authorities, keep it secret to avoid getting in trouble, or find some middle ground that allows Kristen to be freed while minimizing Rachel's legal exposure, will drive compelling drama in the weeks ahead. Days of Our Lives continues to deliver shocking twists and emotionally devastating revelations that keep fans desperately tuning in to discover what happens next in Salem's most troubled families.